Hey there, welcome to Ampersand Unique Gifts and Home Decor. My name is Sarah. Today I'm going to show you some display cabinets and storage ideas that I have made over and either given them a completely new look or I've changed even what they were used for originally. If you like DIYs, trash to treasure, thrift flips, thriftings, makeover, handmade, then you are in the right place. If you are not already a subscriber of our channel, I hope that you'll consider subscribing and clicking that notification bell so you'll be notified every time we upload a new video. If you like what you see today, share it with your friends, click that like button, and comment on it. Let me know your favorite thing that you saw today. All of those help our YouTube channel grow. It helps those algorithms that I don't understand, and YouTube pushes our channel out to more viewers, and then we just continue to grow. So thank you for being here today. Let's get started.
I picked up our first project at an auction and I bought it because of the display cabinet. I thought someone had just put a doll in there and didn't actually realize that that's the way they came. So I'm just showing you some asking prices that people have on eBay for similar dolls. But this one was in rough shape. It was very dirty. I started with taking the back off because it had something all over it, and it's just that press board and it was all swelled up and stained. So I had to get that off of there first. The second thing I wanted to do was take off this little piece on the top. Somehow it just didn't seem to make it look classic and antique. Instead, it just made it look 90s and not classic. But anyway, I went ahead and took it off. I wasn't really sure if I was going to try to put something back on there, but I went ahead and started just with cleaning it. This had been out in the shop for quite some time, and it didn't do it any favors in the stay and clean department. See the backing of how that whole bottom half has something all over it? So I just took some Luan, and I'm still using the Luan that my parents gave me, if you saw my last video, and I'm so thankful for that because it gave me a way to cut the back off. And then I took these little pegs off so that after I'm finished with everything, I can then go in and just add some of that adhesive velvet that I use. And now we're beginning the very tedious task of getting tape on there. You know, sometimes the question is it easier to just scrape the paint off or to actually tape it? But I did go ahead and tape all three sides where there was glass. Which of course meant inside as well. We'll have to do something about the holes where that was sitting. So I'm going to use this plastic wood. It's been in the shop, but it's not pink anymore, so I don't know. I guess if you don't use it fast enough, even if the top's on it. However, it still works very well. So I'm filling those holes in the top where that was attached, as well as you can see there's 4 screw holes holding it together, and they didn't have any kind of, filler, no, whatever you call those little wood things are that go in to fill it. You get the point. Sorry. Now I'm going to use the Debi's Design Diary DIY Salvation Solution. It is a stain blocker. I'm using the clear. It also comes in white. And just a chip brush because I just want something that I can throw away when I'm done if I don't remember to actually get it cleaned out. Because unlike the clay-based Debi's Design Diary paint, this is a stain blocker sealer and you need to clean your brushes out. But I'm going to go over both inside and out everywhere because the lacquer, whatever is on this cabinet is almost like plastic and it's very slick. So I was afraid my paint wouldn't stick. So I didn't actually show it, but I sanded the top really smooth where I had put that plastic wood. And now we're going to move on to using our Fusion. It is coal black, and we're going to add salt wash. Fusion paint has a built-in sealer, and it goes on and covers very well. But because this little cabinet had some bumps and bruises, and then of course also the top where I had that piece, I didn't want to run the risk of any texture or maybe the color would take differently in the different places. So this container actually tells you what the ratio is that you should use. but I'm just going to dump it in there and go until it feels right. Salt wash is an additive that will thicken your paint, and it helps to create kind of a stifling effect. And it comes in, a lot of people will just use it in certain areas within their project, so they won't paint the whole thing that color, and then when they add a top coat, it just helps to add that texture to make something look old, like it's had 100 layers of paint on it over the years. I am going to actually do the entire outside with this because, again, there's some nicks and places that sanding, it's just really not going to do any good, and I don't want to have to try to fill in all the little nicks on this because this cabinet it's not really that old. It's not real wood. And so I just take my chip brush, it's a little tiny chip brush, and I cover it completely. So you'll see where I'm just gonna paint it just like I'm painting, regular paint. And once I get that layer on there, then I will go back and kind of dab it to get those highs and lows of the texture that salt wash is best known for. If you don't do that, then it just kind of gives it a concrete looking. If you think about what concrete looks like, where it's brushed, that's kind of what your paint will look like. So it gives you kinds of really neat options. Words are hard for me today for some reason, but I'm doing the same thing here on the top. I'm going to cover the entire thing, and then you can see I go back and I just stipple my brush so that paint has a little more texture. I did not want it textured inside, so I'm just kind of sanding on that edge there, anywhere that paint kind of bled through. But then we're going to go ahead and paint the whole inside with that same Fusion Coal Black, and that will be all that it needs inside. And I'm just, it might have been okay if I hadn't painted it at all, but I really wanted to make sure the paint was the same color. And a touch-up. Okay, so I'm going to use the Jami Ray Vintage Cottage color, and it has that built-in sealer, and I'm going to use it on our backing, but this was left out in the shop and it froze, and you shouldn't do that, and that's my fault. But because it is still a water-based paint, even though it has that sealer in there, it gives you the option to add water to thin it down. So no harm, no foul. I still have plenty of opportunity to use this paint. I'm just making it a little bit runnier. And I'm using the worst side of the backing because I'm going to be covering it with decoupage paper. And I figure that texture will just blend away, and I would much rather the smooth part be on the back of our cabinet. So again, I'm just going to keep adding water to help that paint go farther, and it's kind of like painting with paste if you don't thin it down. But adding that water helps to make sure that little blob I put on there covered the whole thing. So what colors are going to go with my Jami Ray Vintage decoupage paper? This is the DIY sampler kit. If they still have them, then it is a great opportunity for you to try some of the different colors. And this little booklet that comes with it talks about how, if I can figure out how to use a pamphlet, it talks about how to mix colors, so you can take the colors that they provided in this kit and make all kinds of new colors. I did pick 3 colors I thought were going to look really pretty with my decoupage paper, but mixing colors wasn't really my specialty. I need to obviously attend some blending workshops. I am, however, going to use all 3 colors here, and I'm going to start with my white on the top. It was a little bit thick in the container, so I'm doing the same thing. I'm just adding a little water to our clay-based paint. The original Debbie's Design Diary does not have that built-in sealer that the Jami Ray Vintage collaboration does. So this one is just simply a wonderful water base, blends beautifully with the addition of, you can kind of thin it down and do that. But anyway, going to go ahead and paint here. As I work through, I moved on and I'm using the blue, which actually looks the same color as my tape. But I'm going to kind of blend it and make some different colors of blue before I get down into that full dark. And I'm going to paint, here's how I'm going to do it. I'm going to roll it around so that as I go down, I am kind of getting about the same color mixture all the way around the piece. So if that makes any sense. And again, yeah, definitely not a paint blending tutorial. because I'm not really very good at this. But I did like the way, you could have it be the white and then the lighter blue, and then it goes into the darker blue. And I'm sorry, because I know I'm down here and you can't really see. There we go. I gotcha. And I keep spraying it with water. I have a misting bottle that I just keep spraying it with water, letting it run down, and it helps soften those transitions from one color into the next. And I just kind of keep taking my brush, dabbing it, going a little bit more, spraying it, letting it run. And okay, so you're seeing, you're watching it, you know exactly what I'm doing. And then on the bottom, I started on the bottom and went up so that I didn't get blue in my green paint on the paintbrush, because I wanted to have that green be the bottom. So it's kind of, I don't know if you're picking up what I'm putting down here, but it's kind of like grass, and then the middle space and the sky, and then the white up at the top being the highest of the clouds. I don't know. That's what I was going for. So you can let me know in the comments whether you think I achieved it or I just picked 3 random weird colors and you have no idea why I did it. So while that's drying, we're going to go ahead and use Debbie's Design Diary liquid patina to decoupage our Jami Vintage paper. And you can see when it gets stuck, that's my main tips and tricks I can teach you is that when your sealers get stuck, you just flip it upside down, bang it on the table, and it comes open. No, seriously, I like to mist my paper to help open up those fibers. It gets rid of the wrinkles, and then I like to throw my brush at the, nope, just kidding, I dropped my brush. But I'm going to take a starter strip and just do around the bottom with the decoupage paper. So rather than try to do everything at once, while, since my paper is wet, it gives me a little bit of flexibility and stretch. You don't want to do too much, or, it still will rip. It is decoupage paper, but it allows me to have a little bit more play with it. And then I have my hand inside just a Ziploc bag that I use to smooth it so that I'm not putting my fingers right on there. You think your fingers are smooth until you try to wipe it across a piece of decoupage paper. So I'm just going to move my way up. I'm going to do the same thing, add a little bit more liquid patina, spray my paper, and then put it up there and smooth it down. And I'm going to do that all the way until I have this entire thing decoupaged on my board. I made sure that my white paint was completely dry before I started. You don't want, if you don't and you go ahead and try to decoupage, that paint is, it sometimes will blend and white will bleed through. Now remember, I used the Jami Vintage with the sealer, so since it was dry, then I don't have to worry about my liquid patina reactivating it and mixing in. But it will if paint that either isn't completely dry or you're using some of the Debbie's Design Diary, you want to make sure that it's had a little bit of time to dry and cure if you're not going to seal it before you do this. And if you want, you can ask me how I know, and I can tell you about how I accidentally had the white paint coming through and on my decoupage paper.
Easy rider on the highway, station wagon going slow.
Remember that whole you can reactivate it? So I am, because this is our clay-based paint, I'm just spraying it with water and taking a paper towel, and I'm helping to soften some of those transitions. So there were little places after they dried where they just seemed a little too like a straight line across there. So I was able to just spray it with water and continue to blend it. And then once everything was dry again from where I had gotten it wet, I'm taking some 220 sandpaper and smoothing it down, because remember where I had that texture? So what I'm doing here is finally getting smart enough to use a power sander. And then it is going to have some of that dark is going to come through and it'll be obvious that it was that dark paint underneath it. since that has a built-in sealer, that Fusion Mineral Paint All-in-One has that built-in sealer, I can do this and not have to worry about that black blending in with any of my colors. But it is smooth to the touch, even though you can see the texture once I have sanded it. And this power sander made quick order of it, but I have to laugh, I didn't have any of that triangle size sandpaper, so I had to use my round one and I just stuck it on there. But as you can see, it did just fine. Is this anyone else's favorite part of the project? It can be scary or it can be exciting, or it can be a little bit of both. But I love when it's time to take the tape off. It's like, you know, opening a new present, a new gift at your birthday or Christmas. But that is the part here, is just removing all of that tape, and I did have it quite heavily on there because I went one way and then the other way. You can see the bottom of it here, and I never do show it, but I use self-adhesive velvet, and if you've seen any of my other videos, then you are familiar with that. I will go ahead and put the link in this video description, even though you didn't see me use it. But I like to finish out the bottoms and the backs of certain things, and I will add that to the bottom where I took those plastic pegs off. And it's because I just wanted to cover this bottom. I didn't want to have to replace it, but where it had some kind of, I don't know, from where the bottom had been wet. It wasn't swollen like the press board, but you could still see staining on it. That's the word I'm looking for. So anyway, I cover it up, but you can't see it.
Windows open, you are basking in the bluegrass radio.
While I'm still waiting for my Debi's Design Diary clear wax to be delivered, I'm going to go ahead and use this Behr wax again. And it works fine. There's nothing wrong with it. I just absolutely love the buttery smooth wax from Debi's Design Diary. This one is a little harder and it leaves a little bit more white residue. So I just really love the other, but this one does a great job. I have this big fat brush that I use and it makes it go on very quickly. But I want to go ahead and seal in my paint with clear. And you do need to make sure that you seal in the Debi's Design Diary clay-based paint with something. If you let it just sit for a really long time, it will eventually cure. But it's, for the most part, it can be reactivated with water. So you want to make sure that you've sealed it with something. So I'm putting the clear wax on first, and then I'm going to follow up with the dark wax. So the clear helps you to have a little bit more control over the dark. And if you don't do it first and you forget, you can always go back and use clear kind of as an eraser after the fact, but it doesn't work as well. People ask how do you wash a wax brush? And as you can see, I don't, at least not very often. So it was pretty hard. Might be time to be soaking my wax brush in some Dawn dish soap. It will get rid of that. You can use hot water and Dawn dish soap, and it will help get rid of a lot of that and make it soft again. So it's not totally, it's not the end of the world if you have let it get totally stiff. This one I was able to beat around on the table and press and get all the bristles loose again. But as you can see, I am putting dark wax everywhere, and then I'm just going to wipe it down with a rag. This is just an old rag, and that is like really full of wax. But I just wipe off all of that excess. And again, you can use the clear at this point if you find out you've put too much on. Okay, sorry, moving right along. I'm just using my sandpaper along the edges. That is the best way to cut the decoupage. You want to make sure it's totally dry. If it's not totally dry, it will rip your paper. But when it's not, you can just go against it. See, I'm moving down, and then you can pull those pieces off. And I'm going to seal with my liquid patina around the edges just to make sure that nothing peels up in case something wasn't totally secured there when I sanded it. And then I'm going to add a couple two different coats of it inside here, or on it will be, my head's ahead of me. It will be inside there, but I'm going to put it on there. Okay. I am now cleaning off any paint that might have seeped through, as well as my wax. You can use a blade for this. Just make sure you keep it at an angle so that you don't actually scratch your glass. You want to really be as angled as you can. And then we're going to go ahead and put our back on. We're going to use my little brad nailer here. And I went all the way around it. It probably has more than it needs, but I really wanted to make sure it was on there good, flat, and tight. And none of them poked through the outside or the inside where they didn't belong. So I was really excited and proud of that. Just blending this in, I'm going to go ahead and paint it black. This is just the Debbie's Design Diary little black dress. It's not the fusion paint. I had this sitting here and decided to go ahead and use it. You can see that black coal black is sitting there too. I don't know why I didn't use that, but I went ahead and painted the edges with a little paintbrush just to try to keep it off of the colored edges.
Okay, paint's dry. Fingerprints in it. But we're going to actually use dark wax to seal it, and it might feel at first a little redundant, but what happens sometimes when you use a clear wax is it actually leaves a white residue. So we are going to use our dark wax, give it an overall coat to seal in our chalk paint. Actually, it's a clay base, sorry. It's not chalk, it's clay based. Get our excess off. All right, we are finished. Let's let this cure a little bit. We'll buff it, and then we'll display it. Okay, I gotta put my pieces back on here. I forgot. They are sitting somewhere here. All right, here we go. And okay, so step one is to put this cute thing back on here. So we are going to use this original knob because I think it was perfect. And then we have this that goes right here because it goes in here.
Here it is all finished, and thanks to my Boyd's cat, she is a stand-in for a doll to show you how the display case can be used. Here's a reminder of what it looked like, and I think it looks cool. So our project number 2 is an old sewing cabinet. It is all real wood. I don't know how old it is. It's, you know, not an antique or anything. But I have so much of the paint left with the salt wash in it. That's what happens when you don't measure, I guess. You keep going, add more paint, add more salt wash, add more paint, and pretty soon you're painting everything you can find with a salt wash mixture. So I go ahead and just cover the entire outside, and I do kind of the same thing. You know, it's just the point, get the paint on there, and then you can go back and add that stippling, dotting texture if you want the texture. This is just going to be a base coat, and I know that I'm going to put another color on top. Once it's totally finished, I had a little bit of trouble kind of trying to figure out how the transition would go from where it was black to where it wasn't. So I decided to just go ahead and paint the inside. I didn't use the salt wash. I just used that original Fusion coal black paint.
Okay, so when I had it closed, so I opened it and it created, I kind of scuffed it a little bit. This is because I had to pry it open, and I pulled on that and it pulled it off. So I've got to do a little sanding on it to try to fix some of this. It really kind of took a little bit of a beating when I painted it. I do not think I'm going to do another coat. I kind of like the rough look, but I do need to just get this kind of straightened up. Okay, not too worried. I'll find my little wood glue or knob back on here before we're finished. Okay. So now we have to decide what color we want to put over this. Let's look at some of our options for our floral, and then we'll see what kind of colors look like they're going to be a good fit. This is one that I absolutely love and was going to put in the center of a tray, but I thought I would see if it looked like something that might go over the top and fit adequately for the main display. I like it, and to be honest, I kind of like it with that black, but I was thinking about what if we used our Summer Crush? Is that too much? What if we blended it with a little white and gave this an orange color? Our orangiest flower is in the middle, so all of these would kind of be on there. Let's do it. I know you're on the other side saying, that would look great, Sarah. I think that's what you should do, even though I can't hear you. So, we're going to use our Summer Crush. Mix in some of our white Swan. It's pretty thick, so we're kind of add some water to it. This is a water-based clay paint, so you can always, forgot what the word would be, reconstitute. Would that be a good word for it? I need a spatula, don't I? We'll just go ahead and use one of these brushes. We will make our orange a little bit more peachy, but I think it will still look pretty moving from summer into fall. Now that's the thing, I realize this is only July, but you that are also creators and crafters that sell things know that we have to start thinking about fall pretty early on. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and kind of give this a spray with our mister, because it will help this to blend and go on smooth.
I know that we would never work.
Going to distress it back. I'm really not too worried about perfect coverage, because I am going for that distressed old look.
I know that someone would get hurt. I think I have to let you go. Should be easy, but it's not. Cause the problem is I love you. What to do? I count to 3 when you're next to me. I love you. What to do now? Do now. Only problem is I love you. What to do? You got me bound, make my world spin round. I love you. What to do?
And in true nature of impatience, I decided I was going to go ahead and use my hairdryer to dry it. That's one of the great things about this paint, is that you can use a heat gun or a hairdryer to dry it, and it still does as beautifully as ever.
I want you.
Okay, not dry enough that I'd wax it or sand it yet, but dry enough that I am certainly willing to give it a second coat. It'll be a light coat because there's not too much left. I can mix up some more. I have enough, but I'm going to see if I can get away with only using half of a can and just a little bit of one of those little 2-ounce jars, so I can show you how far this paint goes. The Debi's Design Diary DIY paint is a very heavily pigmented clay-based paint. Okay, so I have 220 sandpaper, and we're just going to kind of rough this up a little bit. try to use my sanding block, see how that works. It's not straight, so it might not work. But remember, the first coat was the had the salt wash in it. Remember, I had the extra salt wash.
How come the stars come to shine when it's dark from so far away and show us where we are?
Painted, sanded, dried, and ready to get some clothes on. So the really awesome thing about the grid lines on the Iron Orchid Design transfers helps you to cut straight through. You don't have to be afraid to cut these into pieces to help you to put it on your project. So I went ahead and cut it in half. I'm not going to try to have it go over the handle. And then I'm going to just start with one side and put it on first, and then I will match that other one up to it. But you take the plastic stick. All Iron Orchid Designs IOD transfers come with this applicator stick, and I will make sure each little place, there's a tiny tip of a flower on right there. And then I'm going to go all over. This is just kind of the way I do it. I'm going to go all over, making it stick a little bit. It has a little bit of tackiness to it, and I just want it to not slide. You can also tape it if you feel more comfortable doing that. I usually just risk it. Sometimes I'm sorry, sometimes I'm not. And I apologize because I have pulled it up to me where I can see it, and now you can't. But what I have done is just fold it around and do the bottom piece and then come back up to the middle. And that way I can ensure that the whole thing is where it needs to be. I'm just using my hand to burnish it so that I can make sure. With these larger ones, it's a lot better to use your hand. You can make sure that there's no places in the middle that are not sticking that could cause you a problem later. This one I decided to go ahead and cut into another additional piece so I can put the one on the bottom.
What makes the sun go to sleep every night, and what's it dreaming of?
So with the distressed look on the box, I didn't want the picture to be too clear. So I'm just taking that 220 sandpaper and very lightly, just with the lightest hand, sanding over it to kind of give it that worn, distressed look too. So it looks like it's the same age as the box. Of course, we have to put our little knob back on there, so I'm just using my Starbond 2CA glue and the accelerator. I will put the link down in the description for these. I just pick them up at Amazon, and it is definitely by far my favorite glue. But I'm just kind of filling that little hole up, and then I'm going to take the tiny little knob, spray the accelerator on that, and then I'm going to stick it down in that hole. And I did kind of just pop it a couple times with the hammer just to make sure it got down in there really well. And sealing in both the chalk paint or clay paint and the transfer, because you always want to make sure that you seal in your transfer. Even if you use a paint that has a sealant in it, you want to make sure that you have put something over your transfer to help secure that is going to stay. And then just wiping off that excess. And once this has an opportunity to kind of sit for a little while, I will come back with my shoe shine brush and give it a good buff. And now we have a beautiful sewing box, or you could store anything you wanted and leave it out there in plain sight, and it would be a beautiful floral box. Moving on to our third item.
Okay, so this is not exactly storing or displaying in the same sense, but we'll just call it organizing. So I picked this up for $3.50 at a thrift store, and it has this piece decoupaged on here. I don't know if it's original, if that's how old this is. It says copyright 1978, but I don't know how old this is, if it's handmade or whatever. Looks like, you know, it has like maybe the key, has cup hooks here for maybe keys. And then this would have held paper. And this is actually an advertisement for groceries, for a delivery service for groceries. So maybe the idea was it held grocery lists. But we're going to make it over. We will add some old paper here. And we're going to change this picture up just because I want to do something different. It's got some staining. I tried to clean that off. But we're going to see if we can't get this off of here. Oops, put a divot in it. Maybe we'll use something a little less aggressive. I don't know if that'll work at all. I mean, it's pretty good. I don't know if this is 1970 something Mod Podge or what this was glued on here with. I don't know when I printed this or why I printed this or from where I got this. But I had this in my stash. And I'm going to be using the IOD transfer. This is from their latest release, Home Sweet Home. And it has 8 different pages of different things. Here, turn it where you can see it. But the funny thing is, I discovered mine has 2 pages that are duplicates. It was like, I'm looking at it and I'm like, wait a minute, is it supposed to have 2 of these? So I got a bonus sheet. So mine actually has 9 pages. And then this is the last page. The back of my book fell off. But how cool is that? Anyway, I think that this looks wonderful with this chicken. So we're going to cut out a piece of this. We're going to decoupage it back on here where I took off that square. And then we're going to put this chicken on it. There we go.
Going old school, I decided to just use some good old Elmer's glue stick. It will be sufficient to hold it on there very well, so I'm just going to make sure that I cover the entire back of this. But this keeps me from getting too much wetness on this paper because this was just printed with an inkjet printer and it will run unless you spray a clear coat over top of your paper before you decoupage. So in the essence of laziness, I just use my glue stick and then I'm going to just use my hand to make sure it's attached everywhere. And then right over top of that without anything else, then I go ahead and begin applying my chicken transfer with the applicator that comes with it. And it went on terrifically over top of that paper, just like I was putting it on glass. To seal both the transfer and the music sheet, I'm going to go ahead and grab my liquid patina again. Of course, obviously, it had glued itself shut. But I am going to just cover everything really well right there at the top, making sure to get the edges of the paper and go ahead and make sure to cover the transfer. So I just try to do a real smooth coat across the top there. I did end up doing 2 coats to add that extra protection if somebody has this hanging in their kitchen and they get kitchen grease and fuzz on it. I want to make sure they can wipe it off without worrying about wiping off their paper or their chicken. I want it to be as secured as it was when I had to scrape off that other thing that was on there first.
Why does the rain always keep on pouring down?
And here is our 4th and final project for the video.
Okay, this next piece I just thought was really cool. I don't know why. You know how sometimes you just like things? It looks like the screw originally came out of here. It's got cracks in it from just where it's aged. You can kind of see where it's starting to curl. I don't know what it would have been and what might have been in here. A lot of times these are for tools. You can see it had something, some kind of glued in something. I'm not going to do anything to the inside. Somebody could cover it with fabric, you know, I don't know, maybe eventually maybe I will. But what we're going to start with is, see, there obviously used to be something here. And because I'm not going to do anything except add some Howard's feed and seed to kind of replenish this wood, then we need to do something with this. I'm using an old IOD. This is from when Iron Orchid Design was still with Prima, so that's how old it is. This is object labels, fashion object labels. I don't know, fashion, I don't know what the actual name of this one is, but it has these labels. So I'm going to use this clay. I've never used it before. I'm not gonna lie, I don't even know how I've had it. Don't know where I got it. And we're gonna cut off a little piece of this.
Before replenishing our wood and putting some sort of product on there, we are going back to our Home Sweet Home IOD, and I saw one earlier that I think would be perfect on here. Here it is. An Imperial Granum, I don't know. But anyway, I think it looks really cool. It gives it the appearance that maybe this was a traveling salesman or something, and he was putting his great medicinal food in here. So it obviously was full of Snicker bars and Butterfingers. Just how I apply all of my transfers, I begin with going all over to kind of help it adhere and stick a little bit, and then I commit to one corner or side, and I just begin working, moving around kind of in a circle so that I work my way back into the middle, making sure all the edges are adhered, and then taking my hand or the top carrier sheet and burnishing it in by just making sure that I rub all over and that each piece is stuck to the box. I cut this off. It actually said best recipes for baking, but I cut this part off just to add a little something there under where I have my my little mold that I glued on there that you guys couldn't see me doing. Well, the Howard's Feed and Seed was out in the shop, so instead we're using the Howard's Butcher Block Oil. But both of them will help to rejuvenate that wood and give it the moisture that it needs. This had settled and all of the wax part was in the bottom, so I shook it really well, and once it was all mixed in, I just squeeze it on there. I'm using a big fluffy wax brush, and I'm just going to kind of work it in, making sure that all of the wood gets that juice.
You keep turning heads when you walk by. If they only knew you left me blind.
I also added a little silver gilding wax to my mold that I put on there.